I was standing in the lawyer's office, the air thick with that stale scent of old paper and older secrets, when my aunt, my father's only sister, leaned across the polished table and hissed through her teeth. "Why," she said, her voice sharper than the metal edge of a filing cabinet, "is her name on every single document?" Her finger jabbed at the stack of folders the lawyer had laid before us. Each one was neatly labeled, dated, notarized. And every one of them, every will, directive, medical authorization, bank affidavit, bore the same signature. My father's. And the same beneficiary. Me. I didn't speak. Not at first. I watched her face twist as she rifled through the pages faster and faster, as if sheer speed might change the ink itself. I watched her cheeks redden, watched her jaw tighten until I thought a tooth might crack. "I took care of him," she said. "I was there every day. I was the one who cooked for him, cleaned for him, paid his bills when he couldn't. And now I find out you, someone who wasn't even around, has your name on everything." The lawyer cleared his throat, but she held up a hand so sharply he fell silent. She turned to me. Her eyes were narrow, gleaming with something that wasn't quite grief, wasn't quite rage, something more like wounded entitlement. "Explain this," she demanded. "Explain why your father would do this to me." My heart pounded once, heavy, slow. Because I knew the real reason. Because the truth was sitting quietly behind my ribs like a sealed envelope. But more importantly, because I knew she would never believe me. She pushed the papers away dramatically, like a gambler folding a losing hand. "I want everything reviewed," she snapped. "Every signature authenticated. Every timestamp confirmed. Something isn't right." She said that with such certainty, you'd think she'd caught me switching signatures in the dead of night. But I didn't flinch. I just looked at her, this woman who'd claimed her devotion like a badge of honor, and waited for what I knew was coming. "I won't let you take what's mine." There it was. Not grief. Not loyalty. Ownership. The lawyer tried to speak again, but she barreled on. "I took care of him till the end," she repeated, louder now, theatrical enough that if someone had been filming, they'd have called it overacting. "And now this girl, who barely showed up, wants to walk away with everything he had? His house. His savings. His land." She leaned in closer. "Over my dead body." Her voice echoed against the wooden walls. And in that moment, I understood two things with chilling clarity. First, she had no idea what my father had really told me during those private conversations in the last months of his life. And second, she was about to discover that every document, every directive, every last legal thread, led straight to me for a reason. A reason she would hate. A reason she would fight. A reason that would unravel everything she thought she knew. I inhaled slowly and folded my hands in my lap. Because she wasn't just questioning paperwork. She was challenging the truth. And the truth, once revealed, would devastate her. She slammed her hand on the table and shouted, "I want an investigation." The lawyer turned to me and said, "Then I think it's time we show her what your father left behind." My name is Margaret Ellison, though most people call me Maggie. I'm 65 years old, retired from a long, steady career as a hospital administrator. I've lived alone for the last decade, comfortably, quietly, and without much fuss. I've always been the sort of woman who believes in order, documentation, calendars with ink that doesn't smudge. It's a habit formed from years of handling other people's emergencies. If you work in a hospital long enough, you learn that chaos is just life without a system. My father, Harold Ellison, was never a man who kept systems. He lived by instinct and trust, a simple man with a big heart and a frustrating lack of organization. When he grew older and his health began to falter, that contrast between us became painfully obvious. It wasn't that I didn't love him. I did. But he and I lived in different orbits for many years. I worked long hours, often weekends. He was independent to a fault and resisted help until the last possible moment. When he finally did need someone, he turned first to his sister, my Aunt Lorraine. And that is where the friction began. Lorraine is 10 years younger than my father and has always believed the world owed her gentle treatment. She was the star of her own play, always performing for some imaginary audience. Even as a child, I remember her dramatic sighs, her extravagant disappointments, her way of turning even minor tasks into martyrdom. When my father's health declined sharply 2 years ago, she stepped in with a flourish, part generosity, part performance, part opportunity. She visited often, took over his meals, helped with his medications, made herself central to his life in a way she'd never done before. I noticed the shift, of course. Anyone would have. But my father seemed comfortable, even grateful. I visited when I could, made sure his medical records were updated, managed his appointments. I didn't compete with her. I didn't want to. But my father. He was wiser than she believed. During one quiet afternoon, months before his final hospitalization, he asked me to sit with him on the back porch. The sun had dipped low, casting a warm, golden wash over the yard. "Maggie," he said softly, "I need to put things in order. And I need you to help me." I never expected what came next. His voice, once strong, was thin but resolute as he explained his wishes with a clarity he hadn't shown in years. He wanted things documented, decisions he'd made after observing behaviors he could no longer tolerate. He made me promise to respect his reasoning, even if others wouldn't. I kept that promise. And so, while my aunt performed her devotion publicly, meals, errands, calls, my father spoke privately with me about what he truly wanted. He signed every document willingly. He initialed every page. He made recordings. He ensured witnesses. Not because he didn't appreciate Lorraine's help, but because he knew something I didn't. Something I would only uncover after his death. My father had told me, "One day, Maggie, the truth will try to hide. And you must let it come out." I didn't understand then. But I would soon. Growing up, my father was the anchor of our small family. My mother died young, too young, and for years it was just the two of us. He cooked simple meals, taught me how to garden, and insisted that being dependable was more important than being impressive. My Aunt Lorraine, on the other hand, lived a life of emotional theater. She drifted in and out, appearing when she needed comfort, disappearing when she'd had her fill of responsibility. My father protected her, though. He always made excuses for her, always softened her mistakes with, "She means well." I suppose some part of him hoped she would mature. She never did. Still, she was family. And when she suddenly began visiting Dad 3 times a week instead of twice a year, I admit I was relieved. I wanted him surrounded by care, by warmth. I was happy he didn't feel alone. But Lorraine had a way of making even kindness transactional. Soon, she began narrating her efforts as though she were the only one keeping him alive. "He's so lucky to have me," she'd say to neighbors. "I'm doing everything," she'd sigh to me on the phone. "I don't know how much longer I can manage," she'd declare loudly in grocery aisles, ensuring someone heard. I stayed quiet. People who seek applause tend to resent those who don't clap. As my father weakened, Lorraine's presence grew louder, her footsteps, her opinions, her self-sacrifice. Yet when I visited, I found unpaid bills stuffed in drawers, medications disorganized, and my father thinner than before. "Lorraine said you'd been eating well," I'd say gently. He'd look away. "She tries." And she did try. But she also distracted easily. She cancelled appointments if they conflicted with her social plans. She forgot medications when she was tired. She left bills unopened because they stressed her out. Still, she insisted she was his savior. The family dynamic tightened like a rope pulling at 3 ends. My father wanting peace, my aunt wanting recognition, and me wanting stability. Then, the last Thanksgiving we shared together, something shifted. My father pulled me aside. He asked for privacy. Lorraine rolled her eyes but stepped out. "Maggie," he whispered, "I know what she tells people. I know what she thinks she deserves." He took my hand, his fingers trembling. "But love isn't ownership. And help isn't currency. Then he said something that chilled me, something I didn't fully grasp until the lawyer meeting months later. "I've seen how she handles things when she thinks no one is watching. And I've seen how you handle things when no one gives you credit." Those words lodged themselves in my chest. Not long after that conversation, he asked me to schedule meetings with a lawyer. Lorraine never knew. And after he passed, she stepped into the spotlight she'd built for herself and announced, "I took care of him till the end." But care and responsibility are not the same thing. The day after the funeral, I received a letter from the lawyer, one my father had written months earlier. Inside it were instructions and proof. The letter led me to the betrayal my father had anticipated. It began with an instruction. "Maggie, look through the bank statements for the last year. Compare them with the checks I wrote. You'll understand what's been happening." I spent an entire evening at my kitchen table, spreading out papers, receipts, and statements. At first, nothing seemed unusual. My father had always been frugal, small withdrawals, simple purchases. But then I saw them. Large ATM withdrawals from a location he never visited. Payments to a boutique he had no reason to step into. A series of transfers labeled cash reimbursement, home expenses. There was nothing inherently incriminating, until I compared them to Lorraine's own handwriting in his checkbook ledger. She had logged reimbursement claims with suspicious regularity. $300 here, $120 there, $450 for household errands. Yet none of those matched actual bills, invoices, or expenses. In fact, I found dozens of checks she had convinced him to write, checks that she then cashed herself. Over $14,000 in total. Not catastrophic, but unmistakably orchestrated. And just when I thought I'd reached the extent of it, I found the credit card statements. My father didn't own a credit card. But his bank account was linked to one. The name on it. Lorraine. She had opened a card using his identity, authorized user, she'd claimed, and had been charging groceries, personal items, and even salon visits. She'd paid off small amounts to keep the account from alarming him, balancing the minimums like a performer juggling knives. It wasn't enough to land her in prison, but enough to reveal the truth of her intentions. Still, my father hadn't sought revenge. He hadn't even confronted her. Instead, he had meticulously documented everything and handed it to me in neat, painful order. He didn't want to fight. He wanted clarity. And that clarity is what every document reflected. I sat there in my quiet kitchen, hearing the faint hum of the refrigerator, feeling a sting beneath my ribs that was equal parts anger and heartbreak. She hadn't just taken advantage of him. She had done it while announcing to the world how selfless she was. She had stolen while demanding applause. She had exploited his trust while proclaiming devotion. The betrayal wasn't simply about money. It was about dignity, about truth, about rewriting a narrative while he was too sick to correct it. And now that he was gone, Lorraine believed she could rewrite his final wishes too. She had no idea he'd already sealed them. No idea I held every piece of evidence he'd quietly gathered. And no idea that the next move was mine. The next morning, I received a call from the lawyer. "You should come in," he said. "There's something in the safe deposit box you need to see." The lawyer met me at the bank on a drizzly Thursday morning. The sky was the color of wet cement. Raindrops tapped against the windows like impatient fingers. We signed the access forms, walked down into the cold vault-like room, and waited as the attendant retrieved the small metal box bearing my father's name. Inside were 3 items. A sealed envelope with my name on it. A USB drive. A handwritten ledger in my father's careful block letters. The lawyer gave a somber nod. He left explicit instructions that all of this be reviewed only after his passing. At my request, we returned to his office where I could process everything in order. I opened the envelope first. Inside was a letter from my father, gentle, sorrowful, but resolute. "Maggie, if you are reading this, then I am no longer able to settle matters myself. What I discovered over the last year concerned me deeply. I didn't want conflict in my final months, but I also couldn't allow the truth to be buried. I trust you to protect what is right, but also to handle everything with dignity. Do not fight. Simply reveal. Below the letter, he had listed items stored on the USB. Hospital recordings. Financial logs. Phone screenshots. Even a video clip, time-stamped, where he confronted Lorraine quietly, asking why money was missing. She denied it, of course. Then she cried. Then she manipulated. And the moment he tried to stop supporting one of her errands, she told him, "Well, if I'm doing all the work around here, I deserve some compensation." My chest tightened. She had believed her behavior justified. The lawyer exhaled as he watched the video. "Your father documented everything meticulously. This is substantial." And then we opened the ledger. Every dollar. Every discrepancy. Every date he noticed something was off. Each entry written with the slow precision of a man preparing his truth long before anyone questioned it. Finally, the lawyer showed me the stack of legal documents my father had signed. Power of attorney. Medical directives. Updated will. Property deeds. A notarized note revoking any previous verbal agreements with Lorraine. All with witnesses. All with timestamps. All airtight. And now I understood exactly why he had moved everything into my name. Not to punish Lorraine, but to protect the family estate from her misuse. When the review was complete, the lawyer leaned back in his chair. "You realize," he said softly, "that when Lorraine challenges this, and she will be walking directly into evidence your father prepared." I nodded. "The truth," I said, "has been waiting for her." And indeed, while we sat there, his assistant came in with fresh news. Lorraine had already left 3 angry voicemails demanding meetings, audits, explanations. She wasn't just suspicious. She was preparing for a fight she thought she could win. But she had no idea how thoroughly my father had prepared for her. The lawyer handed me one last sheet. A court date. Lorraine had officially filed a petition questioning the validity of every document. It was time to respond. I drove home from the lawyer's office in silence, windshield wipers swaying rhythmically, almost soothingly. But inside me, something had shifted. For weeks, I had swallowed my irritation, endured Lorraine's theatrics, and tried to let grief settle quietly. But now she had escalated this into a full legal assault. And for the first time since my father passed, I realized. She thought I was passive. She thought I was unprepared. She thought I would crumble beneath her outrage and self-pity. She didn't know me at all. I walked into my living room, sat down with the documents spread across my coffee table, and made my decision. I wasn't going to argue with her. I wasn't going to shout, accuse, or descend into pettiness. I was going to do exactly what my father had instructed. Reveal. Let the truth do the work. The next morning, I met with the lawyer again and authorized him to proceed with a formal response to her challenge. We organized a binder, thick, chronological, impossible to dispute. Every recording was transcribed. Every discrepancy highlighted. Every signature verified. We included everything. Even the video of her saying, "I deserve compensation." We sent copies to the court and waited. Lorraine called me within an hour. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded. "Why are you dragging this through the courts? We could have handled this privately." "You filed the petition, Lorraine," I said calmly. Well, only because something didn't add up. You swoop in at the end, and suddenly everything is in your name." I took a slow breath. "Everything is in my name because that's what Dad wanted." "That's not true," she snapped. Then her voice cracked just enough to reveal the fear behind it. "He depended on me. He trusted me." I didn't respond. Silence, I've learned, is the most powerful truth-teller. She exhaled sharply. This isn't over. But it was. She just didn't know it yet. The turning point came 2 days later when my lawyer forwarded me her attorney's request. They wanted to see Dad's evidence. All of it. I agreed immediately. And when they finally reviewed the recordings, the financial inconsistencies, the ledger, the notarized directives, her attorney withdrew half her claims overnight. The next day, Lorraine called again, her voice trembling. Maggie, why would he document all that? Because he knew you, I wanted to reply. Because he saw more than you thought. Because love doesn't blind a man, it clarifies him. But instead I only said, he wanted things to be clear. And now they were. The turning point was not my decision to fight. It was the moment she realized she had lost control of the story. Her attorney reached out again with a new request, mediation. And Lorraine showed up gripping a folder of proof that would only dig her deeper. Mediation was held in a quiet conference room with glass walls and soft lighting, designed, I suppose, to make conflict feel civilized. Lorraine walked in with too much confidence, her heels clicking like punctuation marks. She carried a fat folder stuffed with what she believed was her salvation: receipts, photos, calendars, scribbled notes. Her attorney whispered urgently to her, but she brushed him off. We sat. The mediator began. And for the first 10 minutes, Lorraine performed her heartbreak with the skill of a seasoned actress. She described her sacrifices, her long hours, her love for my father. She dabbed her eyes, voice trembling at all the right moments. Then the mediator asked, "Do you have evidence that contradicts the documents presented by Mr. Ellison?" "Oh, I have plenty of evidence," she said proudly. She opened her folder and pulled out a stack of grocery receipts. "For example," she said dramatically, "I paid for all his food. These prove it." The mediator looked at the first receipt. It was dated 6 months after my father had stopped eating solid food. A silence settled. Her attorney pinched the bridge of his nose. Lorraine frowned, rifling through more receipts. Well, these still show expenses. I must have grabbed the wrong ones." The mediator nodded politely. "Do you have any that match the dates of his needs?" She flipped faster. The sound of paper scraping grew frantic. Then she tossed the stack aside. "Well, that's not the point." The mediator turned to me. "Ms. Ellison, please present your father's documentation." My lawyer slid forward our binder. The mediator reached for it, opened it, and Lorraine's downfall began. It didn't explode. It unfolded quietly, steadily, like the slow, inevitable collapse of a structure built on vanity rather than truth. Each page dismantled her claims. Each recording exposed a contradiction. Each financial log tightened the circle. When the video clip played, the one where she claimed she deserved compensation, her face drained to a shade so pale I wondered if she might faint. After the final page, the mediator closed the binder and looked at her gently. "Ms. Cartwright, do you wish to continue contesting this?" Her attorney whispered urgently, "Lorraine, don't." But pride is a stubborn poison. "Yes," she said. "I still believe something is off." The mediator nodded. "Then we will proceed to court. But I must warn you, given the strength of this documentation, pursuing this further may have financial consequences." Her attorney added softly, "Significant financial consequences." Lorraine looked at me, not with anger this time, but with something like desperation. "Maggie, why didn't he trust me?" The question hung in the room like a fragile ornament. But I didn't answer. The truth was already on the table, laid bare in pages and timestamps and my father's own voice. And silence again said more than anything I could offer. Within 48 hours, Lorraine withdrew her petition entirely. She forfeited her claim. She relinquished every right. She agreed to pay her own legal fees. Her downfall wasn't theatrical. It was quiet, private. The kind of ruin that comes not from being exposed, but from exposing oneself. Weeks later, Lorraine showed up at my door unannounced. And she wasn't there for an apology. I opened the door to find Lorraine standing on my porch, clutching her sweater around her shoulders as if the cold had just introduced itself personally to her. She didn't ask to come in. She just looked at me with a mixture of exhaustion and bitterness. "Do you feel good about this?" she asked. "About humiliating me?" "I didn't humiliate you," I said softly. The documents spoke for themselves. Her eyes flashed. "You think you're so righteous. But I was there. I cooked, I cleaned, I drove him everywhere." I nodded. "Yes. And I know that meant something to him. But not enough," she snapped. "Not enough to leave me anything." I exhaled slowly, choosing my words with care. "Lorraine, he wasn't punishing you. He was protecting himself. Protecting the estate. Protecting clarity." She stepped back as if the truth itself had pushed her. Then her voice cracked. "He didn't trust me." I met her eyes. "He trusted you to love him. He didn't trust you with money." Her mouth trembled. "I never meant to hurt him." "I believe that," I said. "And I did. But intentions don't erase consequences." She looked away toward the street, quiet for a long moment. "I lost him," she whispered. "Then I lost everything else." I wanted to tell her she hadn't lost everything. That grief doesn't subtract, it transforms. But some lessons land only when a person is ready to receive them. She hugged her sweater tighter. "Well, I hope you enjoy it. The house. The land. The accounts." "I don't enjoy any of this," I said. "I carry it. And I'll honor it." She gave a strained, skeptical smile. "Of course you will. You're always the responsible one." There was no sarcasm in her tone, only resignation. She turned to leave, but paused. "For what it's worth. I really did take care of him. Till the end." I nodded once. "I know. And he knew. But taking care of someone doesn't erase everything else." She didn't respond. She simply walked down the sidewalk, her steps slow, waited. I closed the door gently. Inside, my father's photo sat on the mantel. I touched the frame lightly. "I did what you asked," I whispered. In the days that followed, I sorted his belongings with care. I donated what he would have wanted to give, restored the garden he loved, and let grief settle where anger had once lived. I didn't celebrate winning. This wasn't a victory. It was a restoration. And restoration is quiet work. As I prepared the final paperwork to close the estate, I found one last message from my father, one I hadn't known existed. The last message was tucked beneath a drawer in his old writing desk. A small envelope, worn at the corners, addressed simply, "For Maggie." I opened it carefully. Inside was a short note in his familiar block handwriting. "Maggie, if the world were fair, truth would never need defending. But life is not fair. People see themselves as they wish to be, not as they are. Do not let others' illusions become your burden. Protect what is right, but never lose your compassion doing it. And remember this, love is not proven in grand gestures. It is proven in quiet consistency. Thank you for being consistent when it mattered most, Dad." I closed my eyes, letting the words wash over me. They weren't dramatic. They weren't poetic. They were steady, just like him. And that, I realized, was the core of this story. Not revenge. Not punishment. Not victory. But steadiness. My aunt acted out of insecurity and entitlement, dangerous twins that often disguise themselves as devotion. She wanted recognition, validation, reward. And when she didn't receive those things, she constructed a narrative where she was the injured party. But narratives crumble under the weight of truth. Ethical revenge isn't retaliation. It's alignment. A return to what is real. And my father had ensured that the truth had a path back to daylight. So what is the lesson? That love cannot be claimed, it must be demonstrated. That responsibility isn't loud, it's steady. That documentation isn't cold, it's clarity. And perhaps most importantly, When someone asks, "Why is your name on every document?" the answer should be found in your character long before it appears on paper. As I filed the last of the estate paperwork, I whispered a quiet promise to my father. I'll live in a way that honors you. Honest. Consistent. And then, to the audience, to anyone listening to this story, I offer this final reflection. Be the kind of person whose integrity leaves a record long before the paperwork does. Because when the truth is needed, it should already be waiting.